So, one of the reasons why it is more expensive to live, why prices are rising faster than your incomes, is because, like I've said before, government is spending a lot of money. Okay, so what government does is when they go to borrow money, currency, they issue bonds. Okay, and investors, people who would normally, are in the bond market and put their money towards a company that might be doing research and development, expanding, or whatever. They would buy bonds from this company. But when the government comes in and they're issuing debt, it competes with the private sector. It's called the crowding out effect in economics. And this makes it harder for the private sector to raise money because they're in competition with the government. Government debt is considered AAA rated. The issue is that our current debt is at $38 trillion. $38 trillion national debt. Wow, that's a lot. The interest on that debt currently is close to $1 trillion a year. So it costs $1 trillion a year just to manage the debt, just to pay the interest on the debt. And for government doesn't produce anything. They don't do anything of value. They have to tax that money or borrow that money, okay? So you're paying for, the interest on the debt. By the time, you take the revenue from income taxes, which is about $1 trillion a year, that pays the interest. None of that revenue that came from income taxes went to roads, to schools, to the military, to pay government employees, etc. All that money is borrowed. And the Federal Reserve creates that currency. They create that money. It's currency, not money, by printing it. And one of the causes, the main cause of rising prices is monetary inflation. See, monetary inflation is a contributing factor to price inflation. So the prices of everything, of asset prices, whether it be food in the grocery store, housing, vehicles, whatever, that's going up in large part, because you have a massive amount of monetary inflation, because the Federal Reserve, the central bank, prints up so much currency, and the goods in the economy hasn't really expanded that much, but you have so much more currency chasing a relative same amount of goods. So now it takes more units of currency to purchase each unit of good in the economy. That's an oversimplification. But that's monetary inflation that leads into price inflation. Now, there's other factors that cause price inflation. Obviously, supply and demand. You also have money velocity. That's another issue. But according to this article, in a decade from now, according to the projections, and this is assuming the variability of interest rates do have to come up at some point, that to pay the interest on the debt will go up to $2 trillion a year. That's more than what the United States earns in income taxes. So the government is now getting into a position where it has to borrow money, has to borrow currency just to pay the interest on the debt. So it has to constantly be borrowing currency just to roll over, to turn over the debt year by year. That's not sustainable. And under a situation like that, you'd have so much currency printing. Prices would skyrocket. Your wages are not going to keep up in a situation like that. And people are going to get very poor. So this is a result of people demanding the government get involved in everything, right? If people didn't expect everything from the government, if they didn't expect government to regulate everything, if you didn't have so many employees in the government, if you didn't have all these regulations, which stifles people producing things, if you didn't have a central bank that printed so much funny money, currency, you wouldn't have the over-financialization of the economy. You wouldn't get companies like BlackRock in a situation like that. You wouldn't have these mega banks. The reason why that type of a predatory economy exists is because the government gets so involved in everything, and you have a central bank that creates such a dynamic where it screws over the common person. And that is not capitalism, okay? This is called corporatism, whatever you want to call it. But the debt being at $38 trillion with $1 trillion a year interest payment, okay, that's the reason why people are getting poor, all right? It's not capitalism. That's the problem. In order to change that, people have to stop expecting the government to get involved in everything. Stop expecting the government to take care of them. That's the reason why we have a $38 trillion deficit.